Greetings, my shimmering children of light. It is I, Dave Makes Noises, and today we're totally going to be here to love and support each other as we ask DMs and players what was/were the most tragic and horrible feeling deaths in your campaigns. Part 1. By the way, before we jump in, we've started a new channel called Riptovia. We are going to be directing long-form stories from the official subreddit r/MrRipper to there because algorithms are fickle, and these stories need to get seen because they're awesome. So a heartfelt thank you in advance for checking out that link in the description, pretty please. Now grab the nearest schmata and get ready to dab on all the haters, and by haters, I mean tears of grief because we're about to process a whole lot of loss. Let's go! Me and my friends had come upon a house that the big bad evil guy was living in. He was a necromancer who had magic we could not fathom. We confronted him and he simply just vanished before us, leaving behind an army of 10 undead. Hardly an army, a platoon at best. We fought them off and eventually made it inside the house to search for any clues of who he was or how to defeat him. After a few minutes of searching, we had heard some growling from outside and the door being smashed in. The noise from our battle had attracted some ghouls. Me and my friends had all hid as we were pretty beat up from our fight just 5 minutes ago. My character being the most beat up with 2 hit points, and my friend, who was playing this session very high, hid in a wardrobe. After a few moments, my friend got bored and jumped out the wardrobe to fight the ghouls. I stayed inside it because I was on the edge of death. Following my friend, the rest of the party jumped out of their hiding places and began to fight the ghouls. On my friend's turn, the one who was hiding with me and who is very high, says to the DM, "I'm gonna pick up the wardrobe and throw it," forgetting that I was inside. The DM explained the scene as this: you pick up the wardrobe and throw it. It breaks, splintering into dozens of tiny wood pieces that pierce Ty's, body, and knocks him unconscious. The ghouls, infatuated with the blood pouring out of his body, then instantly kneel down and start feeding on his body. Ty, you're dead. My friend then made it his life's purpose to revive me, doing so by challenging an archwizard to a 4D chess match and cutting his own finger off. The Ashed Warforged. Apparently, according to the group, my third character's death in the campaign was the Big Sad. My group has come to acknowledge my fantastical ability to get my characters killed. Cursed? Maybe, but this one took the emotional cake. The group at the time consisted of a Dragonborn Forge Cleric, a Loxodon Oath of Conquest Paladin, a half-orc Tome subclass unknown Warlock, an Elf Scout Rogue /Fighter /Warlock, and my Warforged Grave Cleric known as Eclipse, they/them. Backstory-wise, my character was created by the cleric's in-game significant other as an emergency rescue when my previous character had been killed, and most of the party had either been knocked unconscious or paralyzed. Personality-wise, they were most reminiscent of a cross between Wally, the Iron Giant, and Baymax, quickly becoming Warforged's baby through their childlike exuberance and innocent expressions. We were exploring the Underdark in a high-risk campaign to find the Node, a Mind Flayer invasion headquarters. Whilst delving deeper in, we found the lair of a beholder. Best classic D&D monster, but the dreaded random multi-beam can be a real slap in the face. Much of the party had been hit by some combination of petrification, paralysis, and fear rays. My Warforged had in the previous round taken a big hit from the death ray, and as everyone else was flagging, used mass cure wounds to refresh the rest of the flagging party and return the paladin to consciousness. Unfortunately, the beholder ray went next. Targeted my Warforged and rolled disintegration. Zap. Failed saving throw. Used a DM inspiration to re-roll. Failed still. The damage dealt by the ray reduced them to below 0 HP. They were turned to ash. The DM in the party slowly realized what had just occurred, and the DM addressed me directly and asks, "As the beam hits and starts to work through your metal frame, what do you do?" Last words. Now, for further information, my character had the lowest intelligence I'd ever played with. A solid 8. Playing this out as them stumbling through words, using very simplistic short phrases, and even remaining silent as a simple observer. So I said, they turned to the cleric, their designated primary objective to protect, and uttered one word: run. And thus the story of Eclipse the Grave Cleric came to a close. The party survived, managed to kill the beholder, and collected some of Eclipse's ash and the magic items they had carried, the DM even making the observation that their final act was of protection and healing. Finally, many months later, one batch of previously purchased and unused potions and 2 rings of water breathing came in quite handy on a future mission. Keep track of your inventory, folks, and never forget to pick up dead PC's gear if you can. Now, if ever one of us even makes a Baymax or Iron Giant reference, the whole group makes a collective plea to stop, and I get teary-eyed. I loved that warforged. Still miss them. Not really D&D, but in the anime campaign system, in what is now an over year-long series of campaigns with returning and or new characters, in the first one with the group that I've now become really good friends with over the course of when we met in March of last year to today. In the first campaign, I can't exactly remember its name, but I remember the premise. Me and the rest of the party applied for a commercial job from a company called Coffin Shark Incorporated and were told to meet in a warehouse. I was one of the last characters to arrive, and after a lot of shenanigans, which include but not limited to causing an armadillo to have an existential crisis, 2 characters burning the ground, causing hundreds of dollars in property damage, and the same armadillo from earlier paying one of the PCs to kill another one, and that's how we met Jim, the armadillo. In the anime campaign system, for those that don't know or need a reminder, you give your character a word in which you can make abilities off of. For example, I chose Soul. I was playing a robot character named Aeon, and I had an ability for damage, healing, and summoning creatures to interrupt enemy attacks, and it was a passive ability in which I could see the dead. So, after all that background, here's the story. After finding out from my Aeon's mechanic friend Mia, after we told her we were basically trapped inside a giant VR world and couldn't get out, she said we needed to find a key card, and so we went off, explored, and found a giant gorilla with floating fists and a girl with soda powers. We got one half of the card, so we call up Mia again, and eventually we're led to a room with a guy we met earlier named Eddington. He was a bit of a weird guy with a strange obsession for things to look like eggs, but overall pretty good dude. He'd apparently adopted one of the other PC's friend when they were young and raised them like his own. Me being curious, and after the GM told that robots didn't really have souls and that I could see that, I checked everyone's souls. When I got to Eddington, he was pretty much dying, and we could do nothing. And after giving us the other half of the keyboard, I think he meant key card. After a lot of lore talk, he died. Of course, with my passive, which I honestly thought I'd never get to use, I saw Eddington's soul and started talking to him. We then thought of what to do, and I looked at his now deactivated bots and said the now infamous line in our group, "Egg me." So I threw his soul into the bot, and after a lot of laughter, we continued on, and after fighting the final boss of that campaign, we finally left the virtual world, but Eddington was nowhere to be found. We immediately freaked out and began looking at his bots, then his body. Nothing. At the time, we knew he was either at best trapped in that place, and at worst he was dead. The way my GM described it made me and Aeon feel like we had failed. Hard. And I was close to legitimately crying. I could feel the tears in my eyes at that moment. Man, I love my friends. Apologies for the overly long and wordy post. Listen, you, I want to hear no apologies for you doing you. Are we clear? Good. Moving on. We had a 15-year-old ranger who was terrified of dinosaurs. We also happened to be exploring Chult, so the chance of running into dinos was high. My cleric and the monk acted as her surrogate parents through the adventure. And then we ran into a teleporting T-Rex. It was raining heavily. We never knew where it was going to show up next and had a hard time hitting it. It appeared right behind the ranger and monk. She screamed and passed out from fright. The T-Rex moved in for the kill. The monk used his reaction to push her collapsing body out of the way and took the hit instead. The T-Rex rolled a crit. The rest of the party watched in horror as he was bitten in half. His legs fell to the ground as his top half was swallowed by the dino. My cleric screamed and casted Sacred Flame, managing to roll enough damage to finally kill the beast. She then ran to check on the prone ranger. She was unharmed. Everyone gathered in the rain and cried over the loss of Team Dad. Later, when the ranger woke up, she asked where our monk was. My cleric had to break the news to her. We were still too low a level to have any resurrection spells. Was playing a Tabaxi Beastmaster Ranger, Strum, and as we were traveling, we encountered what we later knew as the Ranger Death Pit, RDP for short. The Death Pit is a 50-ish feet deep, 15 feet wide pit with a sign posted outside of it that read, "Fight Night, free food for participants." After failing an investigation check and crit failing on the following insight check, Strum decided to head down ahead of the party and check it out. As you might imagine, it ended poorly. The RDP is a hole that, yes, you can climb down to an extent. However, after 35-ish feet, there is a rune that activates, and everything in a 20 or so foot sphere that is alive or was alive within the past 48 hours gets teleported 1 mile into the sky and 50 feet to the west. Due to the wizard not having Featherfall prepared, Strum's armor was left an empty husk. Meanwhile, the party's supply of curing jerky and the 2 giant eagle eggs we were going to sell later came crashing to the ground. Oh, and let's not forget Strum. The worst part was the fact that Strum had just befriended a dire-maned wolf, Direwolf stat block. and paid for boarding for it. Alex, our DM, later told us how Strum was the third ranger to fall to the RDP. Apparently rangers tend to be a bit stupid in his campaigns. Not exactly about the death, more about the fallout. Our first and technically only death in the campaign was the Bard. We were fighting a rival party in a deathly competition. The actual death wasn't too sad, the Bard just got sniped with a guiding bolt and failed death saves. The player made a new character, a cleric, who was the sibling of the Bard, and we moved on. A few months later, about 4 or so, we were helping a town defeat a necromancer that took over their graveyard. A few months later, about 4 or so, we were helping a town defeat a necromancer that took over their graveyard. The necromancer actually brought back the dead bard and forced the cleric to fight him. After several turns of trying to disarm and convince the bard to snap out of it, the cleric was forced to re-kill the bard. As the DM was describing what happened, I piped up near the end saying, "Oh snap, poor bard's name. He died from guiding bolt again." Just total silence. The player immediately felt terrible because they forgot that small detail. And the DM forgot as well. Made everything a lot more emotional. Much later on, after a TPK, our new time-traveling party went on the first quest to go back in time to protect the younger version of the Bard from other time travelers. Don't ask, got confusing. We found out at the end of the mission that the younger version of the Bard was an alternate version of the Bard, if the Bard didn't die. Basically, the DM was playing on our emotions again, as the Bard thanked us for having the opportunity to journey once again. The Bard's player was crying, and the DM admitted to shedding some tears as well. Even though the Bard isn't my character, I was straight up bawling over the sheer bittersweet beauty of that whole moment. We gather here today to pay tribute to our beloved fallen heroes of make-believe and to once more hold fondly the irreplaceable memories we crafted together. As ethereal as they were in life, so too are they in Unalive, and may the times we shared, the stories we told, be engraved in the stone of the ages forevermore. Rest now, ye weary adventurers. For those of us still blurst to walk among the living, tomorrow is the most important day of your entire life. Use it well. Thank you for joining us today. And if you feel like getting some long-form stories into your diet, we would love for you to check out our new channel, Riptovia, where we feature stories that are worthy of their own videos. The link is in the description. If you're a DM or a player looking for some like-minded folks to roll dice with, you may have some luck over at MrRipper's Group Finder Discord server, and if you love me and want to bring me joy, feel free to hit me up on TikTok, Twitch, or Instagram. I'm Dave Makes Noises across the board. Please sub for Nat 20s, ring the bell to join the early squad. I love you so much, and thank you again for watching. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. Smooches. Mwah.